I saw this TikTok the other day and it was like, if you ever want to know who your true friends are, start creating content or like start a podcast. And I've experienced this firsthand. When I didn't have a social media presence, I had all these people around me in my life who I thought were my friends.
Yeah.
And the minute things started doing well, like they're silent.
Hey Tanvi, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, great. Thanks so much for coming on to Unapologetic and like being here today. I really, really appreciate it. I think the first sort of area that I wanted to touch on is your journey and like what led you here today and, you know, how come we're sat talking right now? Because when I listened to you and when I watched all your content and stuff, I was really interested because you were so honest. So that was sort of the main reason and area. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that and we can get into it?
Yeah, so my journey is a little bit different to most kind of influencers or people you see on social media. I actually started my career in banking and finance. So I did economics at uni. I always knew I was going to end up in finance and have that kind of corporate career. Like any good Indian girl, like that's kind of the solid, stable career path I envisioned for myself. So after uni, I went on a grad scheme at one of the big fours. I was there for 3 years. I qualified as an accountant. I then moved into consulting for another year. And that was kind of all I saw for myself until lockdown happened and I jumped on social media kind of like everyone else. I started growing a TikTok platform. My Instagram was growing and mainly because I was talking about my career on social media.
Yeah.
And particularly the negative sides of working a corporate job, like the impact it was having on my mental health, the lack of work-life balance.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where my social media stemmed from. And then I guess as the year went on, I sort of branched into more kind of lifestyle, fitness, fashion, all the other things that I love. And then 2 years later, I got to the point where I felt like I was in a position that I could quit my corporate job and give content creation a go as a full-time job.
That's insane.
And here we are now.
Yeah, oh my God. I feel like there's loads I want to unpack there actually because you kind of just had a really amazing progression over time and it just stemmed from like a passion rather than saying this is what I want to do and this is what I want to achieve. So if I take it all the way back and you like wanted to go on like the normal brown girl journey of doing econ and then going into like accounting, what drove you to do that? Was it like cultural influences? Was it something you just thought you had to? Or like what was the driving force for you to get into that in the beginning?
It was a load of different factors, to be honest. I was really academic. Like, I loved learning. I loved exams. I always saw myself in a really, like, high-performing, high-pressurized environment.
Yeah.
And then I also really view financial stability as, a very important thing in my life. And I always talk about money. I think being transparent about money is so important. And money's such a big driver for me. I think money doesn't make the world go round, but it does help.
Yeah, I agree.
And on top of that, both my parents are in finance. So they're both qualified accountants and I always saw what they had as like very comfortable and stable and they were always able to offer my brother and I a great life and things that we were very, very privileged to have growing up. And I always thought, okay, that's a great career. Yeah. I would want to do the same for my future children. So loads of different things, but ultimately I actually wanted to do it. Yeah. And I was probably quite good at it. So that's ultimately what it came down to.
Okay, that's really interesting. So you sort of saw it and you were like, okay, this is for me. This is the path that I'm going to go down. And then that was it.
Yeah. And also when you do econ at uni, like everyone else is in that same boat.
Yeah.
Everyone's applying to internships and spring weeks and grad schemes and you're surrounded by it, so you almost think like that.
You sort of go down that path naturally, don't you? Because it's like this is a bit of a cringy analogy, but it's like, let's say you're like in a river or a water, and it's just, you sort of just go with the flow, basically, don't you?
And I think it's so hard to know what you actually want to do when you're like 20 years old.
How would you know unless you've like developed like a passion from a young age as well?
No, exactly. Yeah. I just thought like I've got to start somewhere. So it's not like it was like I was.
I mean, it's a great place to start.
It was a great place
100%. You learn a lot from it. Because for me, I didn't know what I wanted to do at all. I was actually like really into theatre and drama. So that was like my thing. I always thought I was going to be some mega actor, which you never know.
Never know.
But I think I never knew what I wanted to do. And then the only thing that I was passionate about was like human rights and people. So then I did sociology. And then from there, I had no idea what I was doing next. And then you sort of fall into things as it goes along. But it's actually really nice because I was always like, oh, everyone just sort of has a career path and they know exactly what they're doing, which is a
one
really
knows what
like
they're doing. I promise you.
they don't do
Everyone's winging it.
Yeah, I guess. But then it's like, yeah, it's the balance, isn't it? You just sort of go with what life is, your circumstance and your surroundings. So now I want to get into your content creation because that's really exciting. So you gave like sort of top tips and things. You were being really honest about, you know, your work life being in a corporate. But one question I actually had was, when you're being honest on your social media, were you not worried about people finding your profiles? Like,
yeah, it was really an anxiety-inducing situation.
Yeah.
The fact that we were in lockdown really helped because I didn't have to go into the office every day.
Okay.
And I didn't have to see people face to face who I worked with that potentially had seen my social media.
Yeah.
But on top of that, I'd finished all my exams and I'd qualified, and I knew that I wasn't going to be there forever. So I think that took a lot of the pressure off because I was at a point where I was like, I don't really have anything to lose here. And I was so passionate about what I was talking about because I think it all stemmed from the fact that I had a few busy seasons where I was working ridiculous hours.
Yeah.
And I feel so passionate about talking about that.
Yeah.
And I know so many people in my grad scheme were suffering mentally and they didn't have a platform or a voice to talk about it. So for me, that was almost like my therapy and I wanted to make a change. So it was worth the risk because I felt so strongly about it. And ultimately, I remember telling myself, like, they can't fire me for talking about my mental health. Like, they can't. If anything, they should be more proactive in making it better for the graduates.
As long as you weren't putting down the company that you were working for.
Exactly. I didn't name the company.
Yeah.
And I also was only sharing my own experience. And the experience was true. And it was unacceptable, the amount we were working.
So what were the hours like?
So I remember, I think it would be about a 3-month period, which is busy season.
Yeah.
And actually busy season became back to back. So it was never really 3 months.
Yeah.
But I would get into the office about 7 or 8 a.m. And then I would have lunch at my desk, dinner at my desk. And then it would be like maybe 3 a.m. And we're getting Ubers home, sleeping for 4 hours. Then you're back in the office. And no matter how like strong you are
That's
and
impossible.
how you're built, like that wears and tears at anyone.
Yeah.
And I think after 3 months of that, I was just having a mental breakdown every day. I would open my laptop and burst into tears. And I didn't even know why.
Yeah.
But it was purely like the emotional strain that took on your mind and your body. Like it's a really difficult situation.
Yeah.
And also you can't really speak up because you're a grad. You also haven't finished your grad scheme yet. So you can't take the risk of like quitting because then all your exams would be for nothing. So you're kind of in this box and they kind of trap you in that way where they know that they can use you for every little ounce of work you can give.
Yeah, because it's like they're doing you a favour.
Exactly. And I think that's a problem along a lot of Big Fours, but also just a lot of banking corporate graduate schemes.
Yeah, well, work in general, they know when you're at the bottom, you know, it's difficult because you're trying to prove yourself constantly. Yeah. And they know that. And that is a big problem. And then on top of that,
obviously you have the whole layer that you're a woman and then you're a woman of colour and I feel like you're also then having to work twice as hard just to prove that you're just as good as your white counterparts.
I agree.
So on top of that you've got that pressure and again it all just
piles in. Yeah, but the thing is, if I did what you did for like a day, I would burst into tears. So the fact that you cope with it for that long is pretty wild, and that actually really shows a huge test of strength. But also I think you've shown people that you don't have to burn yourself out to be successful, because I think we're so into burnout culture. It's like I've fallen into the trap where it's like, well, if I'm not like, you know, dying at my desk, or if I'm not like, you know, really upset with the way I'm working and that's going to catapult me in my 30s, then I'm not doing it right. And it's like, no, you can enjoy your life as well as working hard. Like there is a balance.
There is a balance. And that job taught me like no job and no amount of money is worth your mental health. Yeah. Because if you don't have your health at the end of the day, even if you love your job, even if there are things about it that are a benefit to you, you're not well enough to do your job. You're not well enough to see your family, or not even well enough to get up out of bed in the morning.
Exactly.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, and all that money that you're earning throughout all that time, you can't even use it anyway because you're just stuck by the desk.
Yeah, and life is so long that I think we just, in our 20s, put so much pressure on ourselves to be successful and know what we want to do and earn money and save money and then buy a house and then have kids. And ultimately, like, if you're not actually enjoying your life, then none of it
What
is
is the
worth it.
point? Yeah, because you're just going to look back and say, well, why didn't I just like enjoy those small moments? And I think on top of that, we all put so much pressure on ourselves to like look the best and be the best and do the best, that you got the pressure of being successful and whatever success means. And then you've got the other pressure of also like trying to look your best the entire time. And it's like, I think we put so much pressure on, like, I would say girls in particular, and guys, to be fair, like they feel that pressure too, to look and do their best consistently.
Yeah.
It's like you just crumble. I mean, I've definitely had my phases where I just like can't handle it anymore. And then it's trying to find an outlet for yourself that makes you feel better. And I guess yours was content creation.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And mine's obviously a podcast. So it's like trying to find that for yourself and finding one small part of you that is like seen, and it's like your full self, because you have to be on form in so many areas of your life.
Yeah.
You're never truly just who you are, like in a chilled way.
Yeah, it's so true, especially with content creation. There is so much pressure again to like look a certain way,
Yeah.
and, like show up and feel and look your best. But I think where I felt really liberated is because I was so vulnerable on social media.
Okay.
It was almost like my therapy to like not care about what I look like and talk about my mental
Yeah.
breakdowns and the days that were tougher. So
Yeah.
actually I really enjoyed having that balance of social media and
Okay.
doing the opposite of what everyone else was doing at the time.
Yeah, because you're just being honest.
Yeah.
I think that's better. And people really valued honesty, especially in 2020. Like, I think that was like an era of honesty. People were not like trying to sugarcoat how awful things were at the time. They were just like being themselves. And I think you were obviously within the midst of that. And then that's why it took off as well.
Yeah, and I think there was a real shift of social media and the types
Yeah.
of people wanted to follow.
Yeah.
Because social media 10 years ago was very much like pretty pictures, fancy cars. It was all for
Loads
show
of
and-
editing.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was very superficial. And I think lockdown really made people think, who do I actually want to be influenced by?
Yeah.
And I think, again, that's where my platform really did grow, because I was just a very authentic voice within the South Asian community.
Yeah, you're just being normal. You're just
Yeah.
literally being honest. And I think it's really interesting that we also saw the shift from the term influencer to content creator, because I prefer that term. Not that I don't know if I ever would want to be a content creator, but I actually just prefer that term in general, because I feel like you are creating, and you are creating content for people to enjoy, rather than influencing is for people to be sort of involved in the capitalist structure again, because you're influencing people to buy.
Yeah, I guess I think I still am an influencer. The thing is
Yeah.
that I can influence people's opinions. I can influence them to better their health or
Yeah.
like their routines. The reason why I try and stay away from the term influencer is because of all the negative connotations associated with it.
Yeah.
I think anyone who's not in the industry automatically has this like weird judgy perception of influencers and what
Yeah.
they're like. And it is really unfortunate, because that is what people will assume I'm like without knowing me.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas I think content creator actually seems a bit more respected,
It's a bit friendlier.
friendlier, and I think it just makes it sound like it is actually a proper job.
Yeah.
Because it does require a lot
Yeah,
of
it's a
work.
lot. It's a lot. It is. But so when you are like content creating and like that's your vibe, what is the actual industry like? Like, what has been your experience?
That is a really big question, I think.
I mean, we
There's-
can dissect it. We can go into
Yeah.
topics. So if we start with actual like making content, and then maybe the people around it, and then also how people have like reacted to you as well, because obviously like then people have a certain perception, negative, positive. So we can go into all of it. Just start from where your mind is at. and
Yeah,
we can
well,
just
with
go for
making
it.
content, the first thing I'd say is that I didn't realize how difficult it was before I did it myself.
Okay.
Like, I used to look at people who posted like on social media and think, how hard can it be? Just
Yeah.
take a few pictures, take a few videos. Like, it's going to take a few
Yeah.
hours and then you're done.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize how hard it is and how
Okay.
much time it requires, and especially
Yeah.
if you want to do it properly and actually build a really engaged community and have relationships
Yeah,
with your audience.
yeah.
Like, that stuff takes time. So yeah, off the back, I've learned a lot. It's a steep learning curve. I've learned so many skills that the corporate world never taught me. And I
Yeah.
feel like I've learned a lot more life skills.
Okay.
Because you're having to interact with so many different types of people. You're having to create content for so many different types of people.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's really helped me to grow and find myself and who I want to be and what I want to be known for.
Yeah.
So I think I've kind of gone on that journey for the last 2 to 3 years, which has been really nice.
Yeah, just to see like how it all goes and like what your audience are into as well, because it's, you know, you get hit and misses with everything. I think you just got to try.
Yeah, and it's also like if you are being spoken about in a room or people are writing things about you online, like what do you want people to be saying about you?
Yeah.
Because it's all about personal branding. Whether you own a business, whether you work for a company, your social media is really important and it's a representation of you, and it's very much an extension of your personality. So having to really sit down and think, what do I genuinely believe and what do I want to put out there and what do I want to be known for? It's been a really interesting journey, I'd say.
Yeah. So what is that? What do you want to be known for? And like, what do you see yourself doing in like 10 years? Because obviously it's great in the moment, but it's like, you know, you kind of think, what is like the next step? And also like, if anyone's listening out there, if they want to get into it, what would you like recommend for people? Because I think there's a lot of, you kind of go from 0 to 100. People just see the overnight success and they just think, okay, well, that's it. Like they just automatically got there. So,
well, I think the best place is just to start. And I know that's so simple and everyone says it, but you have to just start posting content.
Yeah.
You have to understand what you enjoy and you have to understand what people enjoy from you.
Yeah.
And I would also say sit down and maybe just like draw a spider diagram or write a list of all the interests and hobbies, passions that you have, things that you believe in, things that you want to make a change in. And that's kind of what I did. So like I started with my career. I wanted to make a change and really hold firms accountable for the way they're treating their employees.
Yeah.
But then I also really enjoyed traveling and putting outfits together, and I'm really sporty. So I created content about that, and you sort of react to your audience.
Yeah.
It changes all the time.
Yeah.
And I think I definitely started off being very vocal and very honest, and I would try and raise awareness for absolutely everything, and I very quickly realised that also isn't sustainable because I'm not a news outlet. But you kind of grow it into the page you want it to be. Like you said, it's not an overnight thing, and it's constantly evolving. So even now, like I think when I first started, I used to make so much content about being single and in your 20s and dating as a brown girl.
Yeah.
Now I'm in like a really happy long-term relationship and we're buying a property together.
Yeah.
Now my content shifted towards that stage of my life. So
it shifts with your life.
Yeah, you don't ever think like you're tied to one thing, but definitely make sure to keep it evolving and keep it authentic.
Yeah, and keep it true to yourself, because I think we had a quick chat about this before, is that you fall into a trap of just doing what everyone else is doing because you feel like that is what you're supposed to do. So like with the pressures of being an influencer or a content creator, what are they like in real life? Like are they I just want to know genuinely.
Influencers and content creators in real life.
Yeah.
I think it's so dependent on the person.
Okay.
I have made incredible friends through social media.
Okay.
And I think a part of it is because they understand things that maybe your friends who aren't so active on social media don't understand when it comes to creating content, putting yourself out there, dealing with trolls and hate. Like there are certain things that your family and your friends who are more offline won't
get
understand.
It. Yeah.
So I have made some incredible friends through social media, and at the same time, like not everyone is as nice in person.
Yeah.
And so
that's life.
It's life.
Yeah.
It totally depends on the people, and I've definitely noticed different industries and different types of people and how they react to different types of people. I would say the beauty industry has to come a long way. I've been to a lot of influencer events where it's pretty much blonde white girls. The fitness industry is very much blonde white girls.
Yeah.
And as someone who is a brown girl in those spaces, it's not always fun when people don't acknowledge your existence or kind of view you as other or like an outsider.
So it still definitely exists even in those spaces.
It still exists, but then you'll get the occasional person that comes up to you and talks to you and makes you feel welcome, and then you think, okay, like there are good people out there and you're part of that change, which is so important.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, it's really dependent on the people.
On the people and the thing. And then does the amount of followers like depend, like do people react to that?
Again, like it depends on the person. So I'm actually a founder of a business. It's called the Creator Space, which is a content creation community. And in that network, we have people with millions of followers and we have people with 10,000 followers.
Okay.
And in that room, you will never know who is like
That's
a million
cool.
and
That's
who is
better.
1,000.
Yeah.
But then I've been to brand events where it's literally like, I won't speak to you unless you have 100,000 followers.
Ugh.
So it really depends. And I
Yeah.
think you have to actively choose who you want to surround yourself and like the places you want to put yourself in.
Yeah.
So there are people like that. It does exist.
Yeah, that's
And
crazy.
it's not nice.
Yeah. I mean, you'd think that if you have like a certain amount of followers, let's say you had like 20k plus, you'd think, okay, you know, you've got like quite a few followers there. Like that's a lot, but then I guess there's still levels within any industry, isn't it?
It's so stupid because it is literally a number.
It
and
is
your
stupid.
followers should not determine how good of a person you are and whether you deserve to be spoken to or not.
Yeah, I agree.
And people buy followers. People, like, it's so dumb because
Yeah.
your followers literally mean nothing.
Yeah, they do.
And you can have 10,000 followers who absolutely love and adore you and will trust anything you say and
Yeah.
you'll tell them to buy something and 100% of them will.
Yeah.
Versus having an audience of 1 million followers and no one cares what you're talking about.
Yeah, they just
So,
follow you to follow you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it really is just so dumb. And I do it myself. Like I always compare myself to people online. It's like, oh,
I do the
why
same.
am I not growing?
Yeah.
Or why does this person have so many more followers than me? Like what can I
Yeah.
be doing differently? But you've got to remember, like everyone's on their own journey. And I would much rather have the platform and audience I do and be a smaller creator
Yeah.
than just be known for nothing.
Yeah, I agree. And just known for the same old stuff because you're just then you're sort of part of the same process and you're never like moving things on.
Yeah, you're never really part of the change.
No, you're never going to be part of the change if you're doing the same thing. Okay, so like I feel like the next main area that I did want to get into is looking at what it's like being a South Asian. And it's like, and especially being a South Asian woman, I feel like there's so many different types and areas and things that people get into being a content creator. But for me personally, I feel like once you get into the South Asian sphere of content creation, you get sucked into the whole of just being a South Asian
Yes.
content creator.
Yes.
It's like, where's the balance of just being you? Like, why do you have to be a representation or like, you know, like having to be South Asian? Why can't you just be you? That's the vibe.
I totally understand this
Yeah.
because it's something that I battle with all the time.
Yeah.
It's really tricky because I love making content that is about my culture,
Yeah.
South Asian fashion. Like everyone loves a little lenga twirl, like the Indian wedding content,
Yeah.
the desi, all of that. Like it does so well and it's part of my identity. So I
Yeah.
never want to lose that. But I completely agree with you. Like we shouldn't be pigeonholed
Yeah.
into only being South Asian content creators because once you do, it's really hard to break
Come
out of it
that,
and be known
yeah.
for anything else. I think I've been really lucky because of platforms like the BBC and working with Sky Sports and really making myself a credible name within like sport, football.
Yeah.
I've been able to kind of break away and become a bit more mainstream.
Yeah.
And I never want to be known as, oh, the brown girl that talks about football. I just want to be the girl that supports Arsenal and talks about football.
Yeah, exactly.
And
You're
I
not
happen
just a
to
brown
be
girl.
brown.
Yeah.
So again, I'm still battling that because I think I always feel like I'm one of few in a room.
Yeah.
And I feel like I am representing and I feel like I am having to do the
yes,
work.
it's like you're performing.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm having to represent our entire community in certain situations.
Yeah.
And almost do it so that like other younger girls can do it as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of
It's a lot
pressure.
of pressure. But at the end of the day, I'd rather be doing it and be the one brown girl that is doing it.
Yeah, that
than
breaks the
not have
mold.
any at
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
So it's really, really tough. And I have definitely advice for anyone who is looking to get into content creation is
Yeah.
don't lose your identity. It's obviously such a big part of you, but also remember there's so much more to you than what
Just
you
being
look
the
like.
brown girl.
Exactly.
Yeah. And also like it's like I feel like the stereotypes that are associated with it, they do really well on content.
Right.
So if I like post something that's really like brown girl related, I'd get a lot of like traction and stuff.
Yeah.
So you fall into the trap of saying, let me just do brown girl things.
Yeah, and I'm definitely guilty of that.
Yeah, I mean,
because
so
it
am I.
does
So
well.
am I. It does well. And it is nice to have that community that you will empathize with each other with. But it's like, how do you break out being like an individual? And then that's the whole vibe of this podcast is to be yourself.
Yeah.
And it's like, I kind of shifted away from it just being about South Asian women to let's let everybody just listen to this and see how they resonate in their own way.
Yeah.
Because if you pigeonhole it, you also then cut out the people that don't feel like they are part of the community because they are doing their own thing as well.
Yeah, for sure. And it comes back to that point of you can be really multifaceted. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many strings to everyone's bow, and being a brown girl is just one
Of them.
And so, yeah, don't be afraid to show loads of other parts of your life and
Yeah.
your personality online. The other thing I wanted to say about the South Asian community, I guess, is also really tricky because whilst they raise you up and they really support you and they make you known for being a brown girl who does all these brown girl things, they are quick to tear you down.
Yeah.
And they are quick to judge. And for me, when I was growing my social media and started treating it more and more like a business, when I started monetizing my social media, the South Asian brands were not the first to be willing to
be
pay.
into it. Yeah.
It's I don't know if it's part of our culture or it's just a lot of South Asians
I
don't
get
understand
this. Oh my
the
God, I
social
really
media
wanted
world.
to talk about this, and I
But
was like, oh.
Yeah, it's really, really tricky, and it's sad
Yeah.
for me because I wish I could continue to work with all of the South Asian brands and designers that I used to, but that would mean I'm broke,
Yeah.
to put it bluntly.
Yeah.
They're never going to pay the same amount as any other brands, and sometimes they're never going to pay at all, and that is the harsh reality of it.
Yeah.
So again, I'm really trying to find the balance between working with South Asian brands because I want to support South Asian businesses, but also
But they've got to support you back.
It's my full-time job.
Yeah, you've got to have the balance between being supportive and being supported.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's not really there. I feel like, all right, I'm going to be so honest here. It's like when you start something, everyone's like, oh my God, like
Biggest
that's so
fan.
great. Like, wow, you're like amazing because you're low.
You're
And
below them.
You just started, so you're still like a bit of a baby. And then when you start to grow, when you start to make the money, when you start to develop your networks, that's when people go, oh shit, okay, so they're actually doing something with their life here. That is threatening.
Yeah.
And that is the problem. You become a threat. And to be honest, like I've had a lot of support with the podcast and stuff, and it's been pretty amazing. Like people have been really nice. But I just like wonder what it would end up being like once it like really takes off. It's like, and I've already started to preempt it because the people that I thought would be really supportive,
Where are they?
hello, like hi, they're nowhere. And then the people that I had no idea would be so amazing about it have been.
Yeah. I saw this TikTok the other day and it was like, if you ever want to know who your true friends are, start creating content or like start a podcast.
Yeah.
And I've experienced this firsthand. When I didn't have a social media presence, I had all these people around me in my life who I thought were my friends.
Yeah.
And the minute things started doing well, like they're silent.
It's
And
weird.
and when you put it into this perspective of strangers, literal strangers on the internet who have never met me and don't know me, are out here resharing my things, DMing me to tell me how great I'm doing. And then you put that into perspective of someone who's supposedly a best friend hasn't even acknowledged what you're doing. That becomes a real reality check.
Yeah, it does.
But what I would say is that you've got to, I guess it's a filtering process, and the people that genuinely do love and care for you will be there for you no matter what.
Yeah.
And they will support you.
and they'll be so proud.
And they are so proud.
Yeah.
And so it's not always nice, but it definitely shows you who your true friends are.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a reality check, I would
sure.
say. And it's not just to do with content creation. It could be like if you're going through a hard time or anything. Like I went through a hard time quite a few years ago, and I saw who was there and who was not there. And again, it was like another shocking process because you're just like, okay, well, I had no idea this would be the case. And I was a lot younger then, so I was a little bit more naive. And then I knew when I started this, I was anticipating what kind of reaction I would get. And it's been a lot nicer than I thought, to be fair. Everyone's been super supportive. But then, yeah, I guess it just depends as you grow, like what genuinely will happen and who your friends are.
The people that aren't always nice or aren't always supportive are probably just jealous that you're doing something they wish they could.
Yeah,
because
and that's the thing.
Starting a podcast isn't easy, or putting yourself out there on the internet.
Yeah, being really honest about
easy.
like your actual career is just
it's not easy.
Not easy.
And so if everyone could do it, they would.
Yeah.
So you also have to remember that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I totally agree. And I think there's a bit of an edge with the South Asian community on top of that, because I think in like a normal atmosphere, people are like that. But then I think in the South Asian community, there's like an added layer.
For sure.
I'm not really sure why. I've tried to uncover this a lot. Like I did a podcast on like jealousy, and I've done another one on like being selfish and like the selflessness vibe. And it's all in the South Asian sphere and like vibe, and like how we all like relate to it and like put it out there and what we all feel. but I can never pinpoint why it's like that. Do you have any?
I think it's part of our culture, which is quite unfortunate, but maybe the way our parents are brought up and the way our grandparents are brought up, it's like you are constantly compared to your cousins or your siblings or friends at school. Like, what are they doing? Or they got 89%, or like it is constant comparison. And I do think our generation is definitely like the change makers, and hopefully our children won't have to go through as much of it. But I think it's deeply ingrained in our culture and the way everyone was brought up, and I don't think it's anyone's fault. I think it's just the projection from one generation to another. That's what it comes down to.
And I guess all the generational trauma that comes along with it. I feel like people have unhealthy coping mechanisms, and one of them is to be successful, and it's like wanting to be successful with no one else being successful. Do you know what I mean?
And that's the other thing, is like, especially in social media, I do think that there needs to be more of understanding that like there is space for everyone. And again, it comes back to this whole like brown girl influencers. I don't know why there is such a stigma attached to it, but there is space for everyone. And you can all be your own identity and person, and everyone can win. But I do feel like we have a bit of work to do, because there is still that stigma of, oh, like if I give this person this opportunity, or if I introduce this person to this person that can help them, it means it's gonna make me suffer, which isn't the case.
That's the thing. I've actually faced that, like literally that has happened, where it's like there is the door is shut. It's like it's closed, because there's that
they're just
fear.
not willing to help.
It's like the fear of potential, and then the fear of them not doing as well because another brown girl is taking over. It's just weird.
Everyone. Honestly, that's why we created the creator space as well, because it is for like creators to actually support one another, like collaborate, uplift each other. It's already such a tough industry and a place to be, and like we said, to put yourself out there's already tough enough. So people should definitely be more forthcoming and helpful,
bit more proactive, I would say. But also, it's not even to do with people, because algorithms are racist as well. So because the algorithms don't promote you on the platforms like they do with maybe your white counterparts, it's very hard for you to find that space too. So you're all competing basically because of a racist algorithm too. It's like we do all blame each other. Sometimes I have definitely, like, we all need to be like this, like this, like this. But it's like, in reality, society has made us like this. We are in a post-colonial environment. It is like a tough environment to be in the West. And I think there is that fight to be the tokenistic person in there. And it's like, when we're looking at AI and stuff, like it already is generated from all of our racist past, because it's like, that's how we are now seen by like computers and by like tech. So it is really difficult to break that space. And I think that's when like diversity and inclusion comes into play. And that's where we need to really like break that mold. So what you're doing in the creator space is like a perfect example of trying to basically break those, like, you know, break all that down to rebuild it back up to have the right levels.
It's really, really tough, because you want to represent your community in a positive way. But you also want to be part of a change. But then you also don't want to go too out of the box, where people think that you're problematic and you're creating challenges and you're argumentative. But then also, if you don't vocalize these issues, then there's never going to be any change. So it's like such a constant vicious cycle that you're dealing with.
It's like you can't win,
and it's definitely a difficult place to be. But I guess I always will have the stance of like, if you don't try, you'll never know. And if you're not part of the change, then like, who else will be? So I even if I make zero change whatsoever, at least I know I've tried.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really positive way to look at it. Like, you've got to at least give it a go. But there's something inside of you that has to be like fiery enough to say, I want to give this a go, like no matter what the outcome. And it's like, I know this is such a big topic, but the fear of failure is massive. And I think when everyone's eyeing you up to see how you will be and what you will do with how you've started, because putting yourself online, I was saying this to a friend, it's like, it's very obvious whether you're successful. It's like, if you start a business, you can hide the figures. No one actually knows whether you're successful or not. Whereas on social media, numbers, I mean, unless you buy them, numbers don't really lie, like especially with engagement and stuff. And I think that's the scary part, is like, if you fail, whatever fail means, it's obvious. And that's quite hard.
I think you're only really failing if you don't try.
Okay.
Because I think that putting yourself out there is already the success.
Okay.
Because you've already taken that step, which I think is the scariest and hardest part. When it comes to social media, algorithms fluctuate, engagement fluctuates.
Yeah.
Sometimes your numbers are good and sometimes they're not, and that is just the way it works.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're actually putting yourself out there and you're creating the content, I think that's the win. Honestly,
That's really nice.
you need to relieve that pressure, because
I need to
otherwise
chill.
it can get really, really toxic sometimes.
It can be. But I think that's to do with your own self and like how you want to be inside, and like that's not really, like, I can't really blame anybody else for me feeling like this. It's a pressure you're putting on
it's what
yourself.
you have to control, what you can control as
Yeah.
well. Like, you cannot control the algorithms, or you cannot control how people react to your content.
Yeah.
But what you can control is the type of content you create, how consistent you are with it, how you turn up and what you talk about.
Yeah.
And that for me is the best thing. Like, some months are great in terms of how much money I make, and some months I might not make anything.
Yeah.
But what I have done is made X amount of pieces of content that I'm proud of and happy is out there, and I think that's the most important part.
That's really nice to hear. That's like, it actually helps my mind. It
glad.
chills me out
I'm
because
glad.
it is, and also you're doing it alone. So as you said, like, no one really gets it. So when you are doing it on your own and you're sort of managing a full-time career with doing everything else, it's like you are just trialing and like, it's just literally trial and error. You have no idea what is gonna work and what isn't unless you try.
Yeah, and also, what have you got to lose? Like,
Yeah, there's nothing
everyone
really,
again,
unless you're
like-
being an absolute bitch.
you can have your cancel culture, which is another story in itself, but
Yeah.
you also don't have anything to lose. Like,
Yeah.
even for me, I could have an incredible spell on social media for 3 to 5 years and make all this money and be super successful.
Yeah.
But then, I don't know, in 5 years' time, Instagram might just die. And then it's like, okay, what next?
Yeah.
So I think you don't really have anything to lose. And I would also say diversify your income streams and keep adapting to the changing environments. But there's always another career out there, and there's always a job out there that
You've just got to
you've
keep
gotta
trying.
continue
Yeah,
to
and
try.
adapt. I think adapt is a really big one. So how do you monetize off content creation genuinely?
There's so many different streams of
Okay.
revenue when it comes to social media. So you can have brand campaigns. That's when a brand will be like, we want you to promote this product or service.
Yeah.
We want you to create X amount of deliverables. So it could be like a video, a picture, whatever
Okay.
it is. And you would have a fee for that.
Yeah.
You can have affiliate links. So that will be where you just promote a product because you just really love it, and you make commission off how many people buy that product.
Okay.
Photo shoots, presenting, books. There's AdSense on YouTube videos, which is basically, you know, when you have the skip ad sign,
Yeah.
you're getting ad revenue basically for anyone that watches that ad, that also
Right,
watches your
okay.
video. So many different kinds
That's
of
a
income streams. And I
lot.
feel like I've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
But I didn't realise how many there were. And I would say, like, putting myself out there has really opened a lot of different doors. Like
Yeah.
being on the radio. I'd never had any radio experience. And then I
Yeah.
had a show on the Asian Network. I host events. I speak on panels. I do podcasts like
Yeah.
this. And everything has a fee where it's, you know, so that your time and your value is covered. So
Yeah.
loads and loads of different ways
That's
to make money
loads
online.
because you know what, and it's so naive, but you just think it's like the hashtag ad that you just
Yeah,
see. That's
yeah.
literally
Which
all
is really
I thought
annoying,
it was.
by the way, because we have to hashtag ad so that we comply with the ASA, which is the Advertising
I
Standards
know, I
Authority.
don't like that
It-
because it's like,
illegal
what
if
if
we
you
don't.
actually believe in the product?
And we do.
And then it's like, well, it just looks like you're doing it for money. I don't
Right.
like that
the,
either.
The perfect content creator, and I would like to think I'm close to this, is only ever sharing things I genuinely love and use.
Yeah.
But I have to hashtag ad because it's illegal if I don't.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I think, and sometimes when I see people don't hashtag ad, it makes me want to buy it more because you think, oh, well, they genuinely really like that because it feels like they're not being paid for it. But I guess that's me over-analysing like people's posts.
It's really annoying because ultimately we're getting paid because we're working.
Yeah.
Like, it takes time to script a video, film it,
Put it
edit
together.
and also you're also charging for the platform you've already built for
Yeah,
years before
yeah.
that. So people trust you. You're a credible voice in the community.
Yeah.
And that is our job. It's annoying that people think we're just doing it for money. We don't actually use it. But the perfect content creator is already using all these things and they're just sharing it with their audience because it will benefit their audience.
Yeah.
And they're also being paid to do it because it's their job.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a whole cycle, and it's
It's something that I think people need to try and get out
not
their head
do.
a little bit.
Yeah. I think I've sort of half done it, half not, because if I follow people, like I followed yourself, and I was like, you seem really authentic in here, and that's why you're here today. And it was like just about, I could feel that you actually like certain things or you don't like certain things, and there was an honesty around it.
Yeah, and I'll also say when I don't like it. Like,
Yeah, so you have to just read whether you like someone from their page.
100%. I think you definitely can read authenticity, and I think that also comes with, like I said, there's products I'll be gifted that I don't like, and I'll also say, oh, actually, I don't think this is brown girl friendly.
Yeah.
Or like, I was paid to go to this clinic and they burnt my whole face off, and I'm going to talk about it. So
Yeah.
I think when you are sharing the good and the bad,
Yeah.
it also helps to bring real authenticity to a page.
There's a big debate online about how people who do content creation keep saying how difficult it actually is. And I keep seeing it come up. And I don't know, because I have to balance it also. My life is a different sort of way. But what would you say to those people that get annoyed, who get annoyed when people say content creation is hard?
It's tough because I've sat here and said, like, it is difficult, it's not easy. But I also don't think it's the most difficult job in the entire world.
Yeah.
Like, there's people out here saving lives. Like, that's obviously a lot harder. And I also wouldn't have left my corporate job to do content creation if it was harder than a corporate job.
Yeah.
So I think we have an extreme privilege with the amount of flexibility we have. You know, you do get to decide your own day. I get to go to the gym in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
I get to wash my hair in the middle of the day.
Flexibility.
And I think, like, we also need to acknowledge that privilege for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's coming from the place that there are certain parts of content creation and social media that maybe people don't know about or don't realise is so time consuming or mentally draining when you have to read horrible things about you on the internet, which doesn't come with every single job.
How do you deal with that?
Oh, it's thick skin.
Really?
I think it's just years of just being like, I literally can't care.
Yeah.
So those things, they are really nuanced parts of social media that not everyone has to deal with.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and say it's the most difficult job in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm super lucky and super grateful to call it a job, for
Yeah.
sure. So I get where people are coming from when they're like, that person saying it's difficult, what are they talking about? I get it. But I also think, give people grace, because it is also a job at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And all jobs require hard work and time and effort. So.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we're so used to seeing something as face value online, we never really look at people's like whole picture.
Yeah, I'll give you my boyfriend like as an example.
Yeah.
He works in finance. He literally doesn't know anything about social media before he met me.
Yeah.
And he also very much was like, oh, I would never date an influencer. Then he met me, and he actually sees the way I treat my business.
Yeah.
And I guess how much planning, how many meetings, how much networking,
Yeah.
how much social battery is required in this industry. And he actually was like, do you know what? I actually
Respect
need to give you
this.
credit.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise how much work goes into it.
Yeah.
And I just feel like more people just need to
just be chill,
like that.
because the thing is they're consuming the content.
Yeah.
So why are you getting irritated by the people who create the content?
I guess people don't realise like the stuff that does go
People
into it.
just want everything, and like they expect like, I just don't understand. It's like even
We
with
hate
celebrities.
people.
Yeah, people just hate people. That's the vibe.
People love to hate. I'll
Yeah,
be
they
honest.
love to hate
They
it.
do.
Actually, it gives people an adrenaline rush. I swear, it's like when you gossip about somebody.
It's weird.
Yeah, it's like South Asians. They love it. Like when they're
I think,
they're
like,
they're doing really badly.
If you're enjoying hating people, then you have something seriously sad going
Yeah.
on in your life.
Yeah,
Because
psychotic.
happy people don't hate. That's
Yeah,
my
they
motto.
don't.
Happy people don't hate.
Yeah, happy people don't hate, but that's the
People
vibe.
Don't hate.
Yeah. This is the nice brown girl vibe I love. Okay, so a big area that I think is so important, and like you're amazing for being so transparent about, is actually like management and agencies that influencers and content creators have to deal with. So it's like, I feel like with the agencies, it's like a given, because they're an agency, they have this like prestige, so you just believe that they're going to be amazing. But what has been your genuine experience with it?
So I've been managed by 2 different companies
Okay.
in the past. Now I'm self-managed, so I do everything myself. I just
Yeah.
have a finance team. Management is an interesting topic.
Yeah.
Management can literally make or break your career. And if you're with the wrong management, it genuinely can hinder you in so many different ways.
Yeah.
It can ruin relationships. It can put a bad light on the actual creator who might not have had any involvement in the conversation. So it's so important that you have a manager that you trust and you get on with, and you know it's like fighting for you in your corner and also
Yeah.
is representing you well. For me, I found that it was really hard to have management that were not South Asian, because they couldn't deal with the South Asian brands, because that does require a lot of patience. I'll give them that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they don't fully understand my identity. So they don't understand how important it is for me to do certain things online. And I think because I come from a corporate background, I'm super organized and I'm really good with emails. I know how to be professional, so I can represent myself really well.
Yeah.
I think management is really helpful for people that maybe don't have that kind of professional work experience, have gone straight into social media, are young, are really, really busy, aren't always organized, and they can be really great. Because the good thing about management is that when a brand comes to you, in terms of negotiations, in terms of reading contracts, you never have to be involved in those conversations. So when you are asking for your fee to be paid, it's not awkward because someone else is doing it on your behalf. So I think that's really good. They also make sure you get paid your worth, because again, they can fight for you, and also they know how the industry works, which is really hard when you're by yourself. Like, I find it really awkward asking for more money.
I think that is awkward.
I don't know if it's like a brown girl thing, imposter syndrome kicks in. And also you just don't want to ask people for more money because it's awkward. When someone else is doing it for you, it's much easier. So there's pros and cons, but for me, I'm super happy now that I'm self-managed, because like when you reached out, I can just have that conversation with you directly.
It was so much easier, can I just say? Nice. Yeah, it was really easy.
Because you did actually reach out to my management before and like got nowhere with it. So I think I prefer it. But definitely, like, I'm always having conversations with other people, and people are always coming and asking if they can represent me. And it's always an open door and an open conversation.
I think you manage it really, really well. And like, just like being, I know this is really honest, like here, but when we had like our email interactions, I felt like it was formal, but it was casual, and it was like a really nice vibe. And I thought, okay, this is good. This is somebody like you can just, it's like a transaction. It's super easy. It's not like somewhere where you're going back and forth and you're trying to chase every 5 minutes. Like that is so annoying.
It's so important as well for me to be known for that sort of stuff, because in my line of work, relationships is so important. And especially when it comes to brands, if they like you and you're a good content creator to work with,
they'll keep working with you because it's easier.
Exactly. So like, I work with a laser clinic, and I think I've been working with them now for 2 years, and we have a monthly contract, and that's because they know I'm super professional. I work really hard to get the content done to all the timelines. I have an engaged community. And that's great for me, because it means I'm not stressed every month that I don't know what's coming in. So I also think, as a piece of advice, it's always important to be known for the right things, like being professional, replying to emails on time, etc.
I think that's anyone in the creative industry, because what happens is that when you're creative and you know you're good at your craft, I think a lot of people might take that for granted for themselves and just think, well, I'm amazing, so you have to deal with me being disorganized on top. And I think it's just about having that balance of going, no, like, if I maintain being super professional, and if I maintain this relationship super well, then it's just going to elevate me, because people actually want to work with me.
I think being professional in any industry is important. But I think more than ever, if you're self-employed and your income, what you make is how good of a job you're doing. It's so important to be known for the right things.
I agree. And a management can either hinder you or help you in that.
I know certain managements don't often represent their talent well, or they're a bit rude or abrupt or not responsive, or they don't entertain any conversations where there's arrogant. No money involved. Things like that, I think it's just important to know and look out for.
I agree. I think that's a really like good top tip, because I don't see that often. I never really hear about it,
and it's hard to say when you're signed to a management, because it's awkward. Like, you can't talk about your management if you're signed to them.
It's weird.
Because I'm on my own, I'm free.
Now you can. Oh, the freedom. Oh my god, the freedom. I think what's really interesting is when you're talking about management as well, and like when you're being represented by them, it's like you take them for granted and you'd never actually know whether they're like good or bad, especially if you're new. So what would it be? What would you say are like some top signs as to like what a good agency and a management is?
So every management works very differently, and some managements are adamant that you're not involved on any of the emails. You actually can't see what's coming in, because they give you they have a special email address for you that only they have access to. So I think a good management would want you to be involved. You don't have to say anything, but at least be CC'd in the email chain.
So it's just transparent.
Keeping you updated regularly. Being super organised, so every single brand deal is like organised in a spreadsheet or Google Doc. You know, the outreach list, so all the brands they're reaching out to, they're also communicating to you regularly. They're replying to emails on time. They're also bringing everything to you. So I had a few instances with my management where they didn't even tell me about certain things because there was no fee involved. But I actually would have loved to have done a couple of those things because one was for a charity or something like that. So I think it's important that they are telling you everything and you have the final say. And ultimately, I think it's really important they understand you and what you believe in. So for me, being South Asian is a really strong part of my identity. And like diversity and inclusion is a really important part of something I want to do online. And they need to understand that, because if a brand, for example, comes to me and they have only white people on their page, I need my management to understand that's not a brand that aligns with Tanvi's values. So they need to know who you are as a person and kind of what you want to do and where you see yourself going as well.
So you mentioned something about how they don't understand when you're working with South Asian sort of companies and things like that. What is that about?
I'm not going to I'm going to generalize, but this
Just
isn't all South Asian companies, obviously. But it definitely feels like there is a common denominator with brands that are a little bit more difficult to work with, that aren't the best at communicating. And I personally have found that a lot of the South Asian brands aren't the easiest for me to work with. That's because they're always negotiating me down and they want the most work for the least amount of pay. It's just a lot.
Are they like British South Asian brands, or they're like South Asian brands in like India and stuff?
I think a lot of the people who might come from India also don't understand how fees work and like the value exchange of content creation. Like they just think, I've lent you a lenga for a day, so now you have to create 10 reels and 50 stories for £2. That's kind of the vibe. So obviously, as an outsider who might be white and not experienced with South Asian culture and communication, it's very frustrating for them.
I can imagine.
I totally
I get frustrated
for anyone,
and I am brown.
But at least with me, I can have those conversations and kind of be the middleman that softens it slightly.
It's better now it's direct anyway. Because
now I just don't entertain it anyway. But there was a point in my career where it was important to me to do things for free sometimes, or to
it's when you're
maybe
growing,
wear the lenga for £2.
You have to.
Exactly.
Was it actually £2?
I actually looked at my rates, I think a year after I started my monetization. I used to charge £5 for TikTok. £5. It was still £5 more than nothing. But now I've understood the creator economy and I know what I should have been charging. It's pretty embarrassing. But
yeah, well, you live and you learn, don't you?
Exactly.
I think I would do that at the beginning. Like, oh my God, I just got a fiver. For a little video.
But it's just really quite laughable now that I do know the rates that influencers should be charging, which are, I know, sometimes excessive. But that is just the way the creator economy works.
If the engagement is good and it's doing what it's supposed to, and then the company is completely maximized off it and done really well, then that's what you're doing. It's a form of advertisement, isn't it?
This is what also brands don't understand, is because yes, you pay for the content that's created, but then on top of that, brands should and legally be paying for usage rights. So if they want to actually take that content, put paid spend behind it, use it as an advert in a year's time, they need to pay for it. And oh my God, the amount of times I've seen my face my body in a lenga 3 years later posted on literal advertisements on TikTok. I think Dilmil were using my face now on Snapchat and doing nothing about it.
Without consent?
No consent and no pay. This is what I mean when South Asian brands just
Goodness
take the
me.
piss. Yeah.
That's crazy.
And I've reached out to them. I've called them out. They just don't care.
That's awful. What if you said, I'm going to sue you?
But I don't know if I can. I don't know. I don't want to get into
awkward,
this legal emotional battle. But what I mean is that they really will reap you for everything. And no mainstream brand, I guess not non-South Asian, would have ever done anything like that to me before. So it's a really interesting...
Well, it's really interesting. I feel like it's a really big conversation because it goes into the difference between how business works in the East and the West. And I feel like that is a whole thing. I probably have to do a lot of research on that before I start explaining it all. But it's how capitalist systems are set up, how they work, what people are used to, and the different types of cultural influences. It's mad. But I guess you just have to either go with the flow with it and just say, well, this is what they're like. Try and change it, which is really hard.
Which I have tried.
Or
trust
literally
me.
just go, okay.
I'm at a point now where it's very much like, if you know my worth and you're willing to work with me, and you
Yeah.
know what I bring to the table, then great, we can have those conversations.
Yeah.
But if you don't, then I'm just going to save both of us the time and thank you, but no thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really well, yeah, you've like developed a really good like vibe, and I think that's amazing. And I just want to thank you so much for like being on. Like it's been a really interesting conversation. Like so much I like didn't know. So thanks for teaching me a few things and yeah, just being authentic.
Oh, thank you for having me. I've loved it.